What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Folks, don't forget to do those things that people talk about all the time when they come on these shows. Follow this thing up, subscribe, share it out, like it up. It really helps the show, and I appreciate it. So who are we talking to today? Well, I have really, I've been looking forward to this interview, and I got to give a big shout out to both our friend, Matt Cox. I think he talked to both of us and said, hey, you guys, your stories are kind of somewhat, there's little bits and pieces here. You guys need to get together. And James and I did get together, and I got to tell you, his story will be a movie because, you know, there's the Wolf of Wall Street out there. This has got all kinds of good stuff that the Wolf of Wall Street didn't have. But if you've tuned in today and you want to know about what's inside a true entrepreneur and what makes him tick, then you've gotten to the right place, because James Catledge is that guy. And his story kind of ramps up in a way that, you know, you see somebody who's got it in their DNA as an entrepreneur. He started with that whole thing of getting his confidence up when he was doing the Mormon thing, going door to door and, you know, reporting his numbers every night and wanted to be at the top of that. And then he gets into radio sales, and he starts figuring out how to do this a whole different way that anybody else is selling radio time, and he does it better than anybody else. And then he steps into this, and I know this part of the world, building a sales team, an insurance agency, but it wasn't like of 200 people or, you know, 500 people, 8,000 individuals nationwide. And things got really good. And then it got into the world of real estate. The real estate was, hey, why don't we diversify a little bit? And then a guy came to him, and it all looked great. It's down in the Dominican Republic, and it's all the fancy stuff. You got Maxim and everybody else is involved in this, and it looks like that we can sell these shares, and they do, and it goes great, and then it doesn't. And this whole thing rolls into resilience, building, losing, surviving, and prison. And then there's motivational speaking in here too. So I can't wait to jump into all this with James and talk and just unpack all this. He said, how much time do we have? I said, we got as much time as you need, James. We got as much time as you need. Before we unpack all that, I want to recognize Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple weekends walking car lots looking for a car, and then you go spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car? It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. James Catledge, how are you, my man?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Great introduction. I'd forgotten a lot of that story. That's really a great intro. Let me say this on the outset, Brent. You've got a great show. I'm honored to be on it, and I'm glad to know this is being broadcast inside prisons all over the United States.
It's a big deal.
In a real weird way, that's become an important audience for you and I.
Yes.
Those are our friends. Those are our allies. Those are guys who our heart goes out to. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you know, I think that's probably one of the bigger things when you have a perspective of your what goes on in your mind and what you're thinking and what you see, and going through the prison experience like you and I did. We meet good people, And then when you leave, you leave those people on the battlefield that should be home. Um, and it changed a lot of what I think. And it's a lot of the reason I do this show is that there's a lot of good stories that people can connect to. And if it helps break a narrative of
Yeah.
that negative narrative that everybody that has made a mistake and they went to prison, that they always are going to be bad or they always need to be in prison. Um, there's a lot of different things that you can learn from people who survive a nightmare and make it through and can share that with people when they're in their dark moments. But I want to get to James, your childhood experience is interesting to me
Yeah.
because well, I'll just tell us a little bit about it because you
Sure.
had kind of a crazy thing happen when you were 8 years old. But can you walk us through how your life gets started?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, it's really important to point out that I am completely aware that I had a great childhood, and I was 100% raised by a mentally healthy single mother, and I know many people that are tuned into your show may not have the blessing of that, but
Right.
relating to this story, my brother's 5 and I'm 8. There's only 2 of us. Um, my mom and dad are married on this day. My dad takes us to the movies. It's in the middle of summer. We get dropped off with a babysitter to attend the movies. Dad leaves us there with the babysitter. We watched the movie. The movie was King Kong. I'll never forget this day. Uh, at the end of the movie, it's a long movie. It's like 3 hours and 15
Yeah.
minutes. End of the movie, babysitter calls from a payphone, my dad, and he needs more time for whatever he's involved in. And so she's instructed to take us to a restaurant inside the mall area. So we finish there. Dad picks us up on the curb, runs us home, sits down on our bed. Now we have bunk beds. My brother's on top, I'm on the bottom. Dad takes us into our room, babysitter's in the living room, sits down on the edge of our bed and he says this. He says, hey, your mom and I are getting divorced, and I'm leaving, and I wanted to tell you myself. And so, if you got any questions, now I'm 8.
You're 8 years old. A
I'm
lot to take in as an 8-year-old.
I'm 8 years old, and he says, and I'm very intimidated by my dad too. He's a strong, disciplined, put together guy. He's somewhat distant in his emotional availability, and so I have no
Was there a whip
questions.
somewhere in the background of this story?
He does have a whip that hangs on his chair. That's it's more used as a visual understanding that this is possible, and of course I tested the limits of that and saw that a few times myself.
Yeah.
Was whipped for sure, not abused, but certainly spanked with that thing.
Yeah, well, I think we all were at this, I
Yeah,
think I'm 58 years old.
yeah,
Being spanked was just part of what you did as a kid, and
for
that's
sure.
how it happened.
That's exactly right. So that was my situation. But on that day, he says, "I'm leaving. If you got any questions, now'd
Did
be a
you
good
see this
time."
coming, James?
No, no, no. My
No,
mom and dad had some verbal warfare, back and
as
forth.
a
But
lot do.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just assumed this is what parents do. They fight with each other. But it wasn't physical. No, nothing physical. I've never seen my dad physical with my mother ever. But it was a lot of verbal, disrespectful communication back and forth. Um, Certainly unhealthy. That's the
Yeah.
only warning I would have had. But I didn't even know really divorce. I mean, we're in Memphis, Tennessee, in the middle of the heart of the South. Divorce is really an unusual thing. People stay together, they raise their kids, they go to church on Sunday. It's not divorce was kind of like an anomaly. It wasn't a regular pattern at that time. At my age. So my little brother's got nothing to say. I've got nothing to say. Dad hops up, walks out the front door. I watch him back out the driveway with the babysitter to take her home. And now I'm 8. I decided probably ought to call mom. She's got a new job. She's at an office working at a law firm. I dial her up and I said, "Hey, Dad's left. I think you ought to know this." And she said, "What do you mean left?" And I said, "Well, he just said to me, you two are getting divorced, He's leaving, and goodbye. That's just what happened. And she said, okay, I'm on my way home. Well, when she's on her way home, I go to kind of explore around this little house. We got 1,500 feet on one floor. I go exploring the house, and all the doors are locked from the outside where I can't get in these doors. And I thought that was kind of weird. My mother, when she gets home, gets a little butter knife and kind of gets through the lock a little bit and gets in. And we learned that a lot of the stuff's gone. You know, a lot of the stuff that belonged to my mom and dad is gone. And that's what he needed the time for. That's what the movie was. That's what the restaurant extra time was about. And that's why we were with a babysitter. He basically took stuff.
Took all the stuff.
Yeah. That my mom would need to, you know, kind of restore to have a normal, you know, house. But that on that day, little James was now the man of the house. And whether, you know, at 8, you don't know quite right what that means, but I did feel a protective internal drive to protect her and protect him, my little brother. And that's the way it began. And I believe on that day, I kind of grew up and I don't recall much prior to that, but I recall almost everything photographically after that. And I can tell you, I was in what they called an old soul, older. If you met me at 8, you'd have thought I was 15.
Yeah.
If you met me at 15, you say the guy's going on 30. I always was older mentally. We were raised Mormon for sure. Mom had us in the Mormon church. I was in the Scouts. My brother was in the Scouts. We both are Eagle Scouts. We went on our Mormon mission. He went to Taipei, Taiwan. He speaks Mandarin Chinese. They didn't trust me out of the country, so I went to Santa Rosa, California. You know, kind of. I'd never been to California at that point from Tennessee, so that was a foreign country as far as I was concerned. And I spoke English, you know, of course, in California. But so that's the childhood.
Wow. And so, James, the going through the Mormon and going the door-to-door thing, was that something that you, I mean, I know that that's something to go through this and then people talk about it, but was it something that you enjoyed, or was it torturous?
It's a great question. It really is, Brent. I thought it was going to be torturous. I anticipated 2 years of torture. It's like a rite of passage for a Mormon young man to do that. And frankly, you're kind of programmed to believe that no beautiful woman's going to want you unless you've been through this rite of passage. And so this is kind of what the guys who don't have a mental issue go do. And I was expecting to do basically do time, and hopefully have a reasonable experience and then get back on with my life. As it turned out, it was quite a good experience, and I believe I became a man on that missionary journey. And I believe I learned a hell of a lot about myself and frankly about human nature. And those skills to this day continue to serve me. And right away, I believe, for whatever reason, my wiring, maybe my childhood disappointments, whatever, I was geared for this. I could do this well. And I had a good experience, baptized a lot of people. I don't want to get into the record setting that went on, but it was record amounts of people were baptized into the Mormon church on my watch, and all sorts of creative methods to do that were done. And anyway, it was a good experience. I became a leader. I learned a lot about myself and others, and I frankly found my voice, not in a religious sense, but in a just being a man, being accountable, being disciplined, being responsible. I found a way of life that I liked. I like myself in that way of being. I like
Well,
to be disciplined. I like to be focused. I like to be
yeah,
reliable. I wanted to be relied upon. And I found that home on that mission.
I think that's really interesting because I'm wondering if that's what gave you the confidence that you had when I know you went you wanted to go to one college and
Yeah.
then you ended up at another college, but really grades were not uh, the thing that you excelled at. It was
No.
more of a confidence of seeing things and being able to visualize it and taking action with it,
Yeah.
which are all things that happen in your life. But do you think that maybe that gave you confidence with doing that missionary work?
I think it did. I really do. I can't speak if you're measuring self-esteem. I don't really know how much self-esteem was intact prior to this experience. I would say it was vulnerable. If I were to self-diagnose a young James Catledge prior to the mission, I would say vulnerable, could have gone either way. Just
Yeah.
it's a 50-50. But the mission anchored me. I would say it did give me a high level of self-confidence. I left the mission feeling like I could set my mind to things and do them. I really did. I think,
Well, and the reason I ask you that
yeah,
question is that I noticed in a lot of the different things about your life is that you had a lot of confidence and got people to believe around you, hey, this is what we should do. Maybe
yes,
we haven't done it before, but actually this is the way we should go with it. And that's an ingredient for building things and to lead things is people have to believe in what you're saying. So you get out of college, what's the next step?
yeah. Well, getting into college was difficult, but once I got in there and got out, I was recruited. I had to work through college. I didn't have any uh, scholarships or anything like that. I had to pay all the bills, the rent, the tuition, the food. If it required finances, I had to pay for them. So I worked full time while going to college, and I was recruited by one of my accounts. I was an account executive with a radio station. One of my accounts was Miracle Ear Hearing Aids, and the owner of it's a franchise system where this gentleman named Barry Finley owned 5 franchises, the locations, and he owned them in Las Vegas. And he was using me to do the advertising on the radio station. And so I would write the ads, we would produce the ads, and we would run them on my radio station where I worked. And he said, listen, when you finish your schooling, would you consider coming to work for me and maybe supervising, general managing my franchises that are located in Las Vegas? Because he lived in Salt Lake City where I was working. And I said, I don't know anything about hearing aids. I'm not an audiologist. I'm not a doctor. What are you talking about? He said, no, 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 no. I'm not talking about being an audiologist. I'm talking about supervising the selling of hearing aids. He said, I have audiologists. They know how to test the hearing. They are licensed and credentialed. I want them to report to you on the movement of the hearing aids. And I said, well, I think I could do that. And he offered me a salary that was almost 6 figures. It was like $90,000. Now I'm 24, 23 and a half years old. He offers me $90,000 plus a $100 bonus on every hearing aid sold. And he's currently selling like 40 to 50 a month.
Okay.
And I talk him into a bonus on the stuff already being sold, not new stuff. And then any new stuff, continue that bonus. And so I'm making good money. And nothing was more strange than to get to Las Vegas, Brent, and have these men that are as old as my grandfather and father
Yeah,
um,
you're managing.
reporting to me in a supervisory way. It was you talk.
I got to tell you, I so identify with you, James, because when I moved down to Texas, I think I was telling you this earlier, I was 22, getting ready to turn 23, and I was recruiting and interviewing people that were some of them were 60,
Right.
some of them were in their 50s. And so you almost have to just decide, it's kind of like sports. That's what we're
This
doing.
is what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they quickly realized this is what we are doing. And it is a decision. Hey, listen, if you lack self-confidence, if you lack self-esteem, you cannot do this, because they will tear you apart. And these are mature men who know the way life works, and they know I don't. And so I did have I remember having a conflict with one of them, and I said, hey, look, if you're waiting on me to leave, you got a long wait. You better make a decision to go sell hearing aids elsewhere, because I'm going nowhere, and this pressure that you're feeling by my presence is not going away. So you're going to sell hearing aids. We're not just testing hearing. You're way too credentialed to just be a tester. You've got to help people understand the miracle is in the purchase. The miracle is not in the testing. And so I ended up having to talk these old men into how to sell hearing aids. And we sold a lot of hearing aids. And at the end of a year, I had a 1-year contract that was renewable every year. At the end of a year, Brett, I made the decision that this bored me. Even though I was making a lot of money, I'm single. I have no debts. I have no credit. I was a really no debt guy, no credit card guy. I pay cash for my stuff. And I'm making more money, frankly, than I need.
Oh, I mean, at that time period, when you're that age, it feels like that could be the richest you've ever will be, because you don't have really a whole lot of.
I know at that point.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, I don't know a lot of people at that young age, but I felt like I was the richest guy I knew. Sure. And I like that feeling too. Yeah. That's another thing. I like that feeling. I wanted to be that guy. And so my bishop in the Mormon church, and I'm active in the Mormon church as a single guy making money. My bishop says to me, you should sell insurance. And I said, sounds like a scam to me. What are you talking about? Why, what do you?
I don't believe in insurance.
Nobody in my family owned insurance. Yeah. Nobody in my family planned that far out. It just sounded like, I'm going to give you how much for how long, and you're going to pay me millions. What are you talking about? It did sound like a scam. And he was a trusted guy. So I said, I just need you to explain to me, before we talk about a job, explain to me how it works. What's the math on this? Does it work? Is it a scam? Now, I knew insurance was somewhat legitimized throughout society, but I didn't know anybody had policies, and I'd never discussed their policy with them. And so this bishop began to unfold for me my understanding of this financial instrument. And for the first time in my life, I understood actuarial details about how a life insurance policy worked that made sense. But I never thought about it, and it never registered with me prior to this conversation. So he had never had these conversations before with anybody he had hired. And he was running a very successful agency. And I was asking these crazy questions from a very suspicious angle. Sure. And he knew that. And he wanted to hire me desperately. He gave me a proficiency test and scored that. This guy and our friends today, we had lunch about a month ago here where I live in Las Vegas. And his name is Chris Zockel. He's a dear, beloved friend. And I remember this interview where we go into this proficiency test. He's telling me all about how I did in the test and everything. He hires me. I'm now in financial services, and I worked for him for 3 years and really was tutored well. He taught me so well. I was a sponge learning the way he was a master of this domain. And I wanted to be as good as he was at this. And so he taught me. And I'll let you continue to ask questions. But up until that moment, I worked for somebody else in financial services.
So is that at that time, because you had such a good mentor, and a lot of times you read these books, and that's there's mentors scattered throughout. But you also have to be the person that's humble enough to take on a mentor, to ask the questions that I don't know this, and then absorb it like a sponge. And I think that's something, James, that is a good piece of a nugget of wisdom to somebody that's listening is that when you're new at something and you got somebody around, there's nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, I don't know. How do you do this?"
Yeah.
And a lot of times the guys that are getting it right, they want to share with you how they're getting it right because they feel really good about the fact that they got it. They've got this down.
So true. So true. I've talked to my mother about this at length. My mother's still alive today. She's 81 years old. And she said, for whatever reason, when your dad pulled out, you began to seek male role models, and they became mentors to you, whether it was your scoutmaster, whether it was your mission president, whether it was your first job at the radio station when you got home. Then it was Barry Finley at the hearing aids, and now it's Chris Zockel at the insurance. You're right. And I think there is a message in there, unrelated to me, but related to perhaps a young person trying to figure it out. You have got to be willing to subject yourself to coaching. You've got to be humble enough to take notes. You've got to be reliable yourself. You can't expect a mentor to come to you. You've got to be willing to go to them, go to the mountain,
Right.
go to where the information is. And for me, I just want to be great. I just want whatever I was going to do, I wanted to be great at it. I didn't want to be embarrassed at being mediocre. I'm not wired to be average. And so there's these vulnerable windows when you start something new where the vulnerability outruns the success. The lack of knowledge is larger than your self-esteem. And you've got to be willing to close down that gap as fast as possible. And if you're wired like me, you've got this thing on overdrive night and day, trying to close the gap between lack of knowledge and knowledge, putting in the hours. And with Chris Zockel, I did that. I mean, this man taught me the business. And I was a student of the first order. And I felt like when it was time to leave Chris, I was.
Well, I want to talk about that, James. What gave you the opportunity to jump the nest?
I was
and
recruited,
go out on your own?
a guy who had left. We were running the number one agency in the Beneficial Life was the name of the company. They probably had 20 different offices across the United States. We were the number one office in Las Vegas for the company. I was the top salesman in the number one office for the company. And so one of the guys who had left previously took note of the fact that I was pretty good at this and came back to recruit me. Now, we were friendly. I really looked up to this guy. He was there ahead of me. He was really professional. He had played professional baseball for the Angels, the California Angels. He was really top shelf guy. His name is Scott Childress. And Scott and I are still close today. And so Scott and I had lunch together. He says, hey, listen, you ought to be running your own shop. You know enough. You should be independent. You should not be working for one company because one company does not fit all customers. And that really appealed to me. I thought, you know what, you're right. I sit with a lot of people and my products don't fit that scenario. And so he talked me through the rationale of being independent. And he was going to help me get contracts lined up. And of course, he was going to override my activity. If I worked with him, he was going to override my activity. And I was all for that. So Scott Childress recruited me into a company called World Marketing Alliance, located in Atlanta, Georgia. They had just founded the company in 1991. This was 94. So they were relatively, coming off the foundation phase of the company. And I show up there and I'm already trained in financial services. And I just needed a place to plant my flag and kind of apply these skills that had been amassed in these other industries over the years. And that's where my life took on a whole new trajectory, really.
James, you at this time, how old would you have been?
27, 26.
You're a young man.
Yeah,
So,
still young. Yeah.
and you plant this flag in Las Vegas?
Yes.
Okay. And when you started building, because you talk about 8,000 plus agents, one of the things that I've always seen in sales, however you build, you got to have good systems and you got to have good training. Did that all just start from the beginning with you on making that
No,
happen?
no. And you're so right. It does require exactly what you just said. The systems have to be duplicatable. If you're going to scale it, it's got to be something that every person can do and understand easily. And I learned that from the mission. Our mission is like that. Our mission was systematic. Our mission was duplicatable, accountability. So you got real good at it. I had steered away from that over at Beneficial Life, because it was just me as a solo artist, and my emotional IQ is pretty high. I've had my real IQ tested too, but my emotional IQ is much higher. And so I'm in a position to literally be nimble and agile without a script, and that's not duplicatable. And so it's almost the enemy of scalability. I was almost destined to be a solo operator, not really wired to be a team builder. And so what I found at World Marketing Alliance was a guy running the company named Hubert Humphrey, who was an expert at what I was completely deficient in.
Awesome.
I did not know systems the way
Combine
he
the
did.
forces. Yeah.
Yeah. So my energy, my passion, and his system was almost like a dynamite stick. And he literally took me under his wing. I spent a year there off his radar. I made $288,000 my first year in business at World Marketing Alliance. And I remember getting a call from Hubert Humphreys, the CEO of the company, and there's thousands of agents, thousands. And I think I've got 5 at the time. I think I've got 5 agents. And these are my friends for Beneficial, who when I left, they left. I mean, I really don't have scalability skills. Okay. Hubert Humphrey called me, and I'm in my office, and I think I'm a big shot. And I've got 5 guys with desks in my office. The lease is in my name. I've got a receptionist out front. I'm a legitimate business. Right. And Hubert Humphrey calls me, and he says, "Hey, boy," it's the way he talks, right? He's from the South. He's from Macon, Georgia. "Hey, boy, how's it going? Just want to congratulate you. You had another great month." He says, "When are you going to come out and see me?" I said, "Well, I'd be honored, to come out and see you. Let's set that up." And he says, "I want to tell you something." And this statement changed my life, Brent. He says, "You do know I can replace you with 3 average guys." Right? And I said, I didn't really know what he meant by that. Because in my mind, you can't replace me. Right. That's the way I think about myself.
Sure.
He said, let me break it down for you. He said, "You did $288,000 in the last rolling 12 months. He said, "That's about 3 of my average guys." He says, "The average guy around here makes about 90,000. He says, "So right now you represent about 3 dudes." He said, "So if I recruit 3 more dudes tomorrow, I can replace James Catledge." And I got to tell you, this is offending me to the core, because I just feel irreplaceable.
Exactly.
But he's making the point,
right,
that I'm not irreplaceable. And I said to him, I said, "What do you want me to do about it?" Just almost like smart aleck, because I really don't know where he's headed. Because I thought he called to compliment me, but it feels like he's challenging me here. Yeah. Right. He said, "Well, I'm going to tell you what you got to do. You got to stop thinking you know everything." He goes, "Because right now you're in a trap. You think you know everything there is to know. And guess what that's going to produce for you next year? About 300,000. And then the next year is probably 320,000. He says that if we run this thing out, you're going to max out at about $500,000 bucks." He says, and that's a poor man with your skills. He said, I got to tell you, I wouldn't want to report to God with your skill set in $500,000 a year. This is what he says to me on the phone. He goes, that would be an embarrassing meeting. He said, what I think you got to do is be prepared to retool yourself. He goes, you've got skills. You've got immense capacity, but it sits dormant currently. It sits dormant. You know how to close a deal, and you've taught 5 others within yelling distance how to close a deal. And that's the extent of it, James. He goes, and you can't confuse this with anything other than that. And so we arranged for me to fly to Atlanta, Georgia. We have a sit-down meeting at the Magnolia Cafe in Atlanta, Georgia, where this man commits me, and we end up writing it on a napkin. I will move at the speed of instruction. This is what's on the napkin. I will move at the speed of instruction, and I will do precisely what you tell me to do relative to the system.
Love it.
And we write that on a napkin. I sign it, he takes it. Now, I can tell you this, 8 years later, I got 8,000 people on my team. And he taught me by pointing, frankly, at others who were great examples of what to do. And I guess the key really was I was willing to do it. I was willing to do it because I did need to rewire me. I had to rewire me in order to pull this off. But I was not going to be replaced by 3 average guys. He took
a shot at your self-esteem. He said, "Hey, listen," and that caught you by surprise. He said, "Hey,
totally.
I'm not going to be replaced by 3 average guys. What do I need to know?"
I was replaceable, and for the first time in my life, I understood it. I understood it from a guy who knew the way, and I had total respect for him. And due to this day, Hubert Humphrey was a man way down the highway from me, mentally, emotionally. He was a guy I was willing to surrender to from a training standpoint, and I did. And he taught me what he knew. He transferred his brain to the best of his ability into my brain, and it changed me. It changed me forever. Yeah.
Well, it gets us to the point, James, to where this thing balloons up. You're making big money now.
Yeah.
You're in a different class of what's going on business wise. And then, I forget who it comes to you and talks to you about real estate, but it's not something you've been doing. It's not a world you're in.
No.
But you're willing to listen and you're open to it. Walk us through how that all happened.
Yeah. Hubert sells the company, World Marketing Alliance. I stay 1 more year. I'm on the executive board of the company. I'm literally there for the transaction. I'm there for the renaming of the company. I'm there putting the policies in place so that company's got a future with its new owner. I then decide I'm going to do my own thing. I start my own company, Net Worth Solutions, and I bring a whole bunch of my leaders with me, and then we go regrow the rest into another 8,000 people. Many of them are the same, but a lot of new. It's our company. We're growing this thing. 5 years into independence, basically. We've got a corporate jet. We've got our own headquarters. We've got pilots that take me where I need to go to see all the guys. We're across Canada. We're obviously all across the United States doing business. And this is the world at the time. You may recall this, Brent. It's 2008, 9, 10. Heavy real estate. Everybody's buying second and third houses. It's like monopoly. Everybody's picking up rental properties. My housekeeper had 2 rental properties. Right. Everybody's got rentals.
Right.
And so our clients are pushing us. We're doing life insurance and annuities. We're helping folks with their living trust, basic financial planning instruments. And we're getting pressure from our clients to offer real estate. They would like to stay with us. Once they find a trusted advisor, they'd like to stay with that advisor.
All under one roof. Right.
Yes. And so I task our CFO, Jerry, to go find us a real estate solution. I don't want to have all my guys have to be at Century 21 with a real estate license. So find us a solution that can kind of be a product that fits into our mix. He brings back a real estate developer. It's probably 6 months later. A real estate developer that presented at a seminar he attended. That they are building hotels, plural, in the Dominican Republic. It's those hotels that Maxim magazine has their brand on. So if you Google today, Maxim Bungalows, Dominican Republic, you can actually see the project that I'm talking about. Well, they present to us that they've got one hotel built. They're going to build several more for Maxim. There's a big demand for tourism in the Dominican Republic, and they're going to build a product that fits beautifully into our arsenal. And so everything's great. I hire lawyers on my side that represent our firm already. He's got lawyers on his side. They're in all these meetings. We paper everything. We're now selling basically it's it's not a deed of trust, but it's like a promissory note that's going to pay a fixed rate of interest, 8% per year, and it's secured by room 101, room 102,
by each room.
Yes, it's a hotel condominium. The deed of the hotel secures the note. All right, so it's what they did. The lawyers, they deed
fractional
the hotel,
ownership,
and then they fractionally deed 240 deeds off that
like
one.
A fractional jet.
That's it. The same thing. Yeah. Fractional jets, fractional condos, fractional hotels.
Yeah.
So this is not a foreign idea. It's a familiar idea for people in that space. Well, we do this for 5 more years. We raise $180 million for them. They build 2 hotels in addition to the one they've already got. We're in the middle of building the 3rd one. This is 2009 when they tell me they need more money. Now, the way it works is we're busy selling this for a fixed price. You can't just raise the prices.
You guys are doing great.
Yeah,
I mean,
and everything's going. Everybody's getting paid.
Everybody's getting paid. You guys get, and I think if I remember, you get 20% or the first 20% for your commissions, and
the gross that we raise, 20% comes back to our company. 12 we pay the field with the sales guys. 8 our company keeps to run the company, and then of course I'm the sole shareholder of the company, so I get the profits. But the bottom line is 20% of the gross belongs to us. We don't even scrape off, Brent, the 20. We send all the money to the Elliott Corporation. Okay. They take the 20 and wire it back to us to pay out to our people. So we do this for years. Everything's going great. Well, they start putting pressure on us for more money. I said, guys, that's not going to happen. They start threatening. The threats were, you should put some of your own money in. They know I've got a lot of money. You should put some of your own money in. And I said, well, it's not my hotel. I'm not putting my own money in. We're raising money for you guys. You got to get your financial house in order.
Yeah. That was the whole idea.
Yeah.
We're going to build resorts. We need you to raise money. And this is how the partnership works.
That's exactly right. So long story short, I decide I have to sue them because they're not listening, and they've stopped paying the clients the quarterly rate of return the clients used to getting. And of course,
so that's a part of the story that when that happened, James, did you know that was happening, or did you have the customers come to you to say that they weren't getting that?
Oh no, I'm a customer too. So I'm not.
Oh, you're a customer in the equation. Okay. Yeah. So you're not getting it.
Yeah, my mother's not getting her quarterly. I'm not getting my quarterly. A lot of my agents are in this thing too. They're not getting theirs. So we become aware the moment they stop paying.
But the other thing is like really big things are happening too. I mean, these are really nice resorts. You've got Kim Kardashian and
these
Reggie
are
Bush and these
celebrities visiting.
Celebrity this and everything's Maxim, and everything's big.
Yeah, like, I had dinner with Kim Kardashian and Reggie Bush. The developer, my partner Derek Elliott, myself, Kim, and Reggie. The 4 of us have a private dinner. And it's all about how great Maxim is and how great this resort is, and everything's great.
It's all branded out. Everything's perfect.
Yes,
Celebrities,
it's all green light. We're getting picked up in Escalades at the airport. No,
It's exciting.
this is VIP scenario here.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, there is no red flags. There's no
That's
yellow.
what I want. The reason I brought that up is
Yeah.
that the bigness of this was fantastic. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
intoxicating. You know,
yes,
you guys got into this deal. You got an opportunity to diversify. Dominican Republic is a place that everybody's going for tourism. These guys are already in it. They've already built a place, and then they get this Sheridan deal. They need to redo that. And then there's this third place, and all you're thinking is, well, that gets us more inventory.
yes.
We get more inventory, we can sell more stuff. Why wouldn't we want to do that?
We're doing it. Yep.
Right.
It's all exciting. The client's as excited as I am. It couldn't be big. I don't know how it'd be bigger. I mean, I really
Everything's
don't know
great.
what you do to make it bigger.
And so then the shit hits the fan. You go up and I think you visit with Derek's dad.
Yeah.
And say, hey, I don't
Yes.
know if he's on top of all this.
Yes.
I think you're the brains of this, and I don't know that you know everything that's going on, but
Yes.
I don't feel good. I don't feel good.
Yeah. And he seems very attentive to that conversation, but then nothing changes.
Right.
And it's in that moment I realize I personally got to do something. These people, 644 victims, and they are victims, 644 people followed us to the Dominican Republic.
Right.
They don't get there without my company leading them there. And so as good as it is, and we have owners weeks every year in June where everybody comes down, they stay at the hotel. We've had the Beach Boys there. We've got, I mean, it is a family friendly, fun thing. Yeah. And here we are. It's now I got red flags.
Okay. So the red flags go up. You tell your attorney, hey, I can't, I got so many things going wrong here. Yeah. We got to sue them. And he says, I don't do that. And he says, you get to another attorney. And then that goes into a civil suit, right?
Well, right before we get there, I want to insert this important piece because it mattered in the ultimate criminal indictment.
Yeah.
It mattered. The reason we're able to do this podcast today and I'm free is because of this moment here. My attorney, my first attorney, who was there when we set everything up at the Elliots, says to me wisely, he said, James, I graduated with the criminal chief of the Department of Justice for the Attorney General's office here in Nevada. We graduated together at Brigham Young University Law School. He said, I don't know if this is a criminal enterprise. I don't know if there's a crime in progress. I hope not. But by God, if there is, why don't we just walk across the street with a box of all the sales materials, sit down with Rusty Marsh. That's his name, Rusty Marsh, Russell Marsh, for those who are following up thoroughly. We cross the street to meet with Russell Marsh. Russell Marsh says, thank you. I'll look into it. He's the chief. Now, all prosecutors in the criminal division report to Rusty Marsh. So he can assign a prosecutor. He can assign FBI agents. He can manage this. So my attorney says, what's the next steps, Rusty, for James? And he said, well, I'll have a couple of agents go out and meet with him. Okay. And they can ask him whatever questions they want to ask, and we'll take it from there. But really appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
Okay.
Okay. So this is November of 2009.
Okay.
My attorney says to me, this needs to remain private. This needs to remain secret in case we need to sue them. So this is before we get into civil litigation.
Okay.
So this box has been dropped
I didn't know that. I didn't know that one was before the other.
Yes.
Glad you stopped and reversed.
It's really an important piece of the story.
Yeah.
Because basically it lets the world understand on the record that I believe there's a problem, and I believe it's significant enough that I'm willing to meet with the FBI about it. And this is a voluntary maneuver between my attorney and I, where we're trying to privately report what we believe could be criminal conduct. We don't know. We have no evidence that there is.
Things just don't feel right.
Well, we're not getting paid. The clients are not getting what they bargained for. So at a minimum, it's civil. It could be criminal. So
that breach of contract or whatever, there could be. So
right. 3-4 weeks later, there's been no FBI agents. My attorney follows up with Rusty Marsh. Rusty Marsh says, "Hey, listen, we're busy. We got terrorism. We got a lot going on here. We're not chasing down the Dominican Republic to look into some business deal you're involved in. Okay, that's the word back to my attorney. So now I know, Brent, I've got to sue. So strategically, I make the decision, none of my clients should pay for this because this is not their doing. So I didn't know what it was going to cost, but it ended up costing $1.4 million to file and chase through a verified complaint. Now, a verified complaint, you probably know what this means. It means that the facts in the complaint are verified factually. The attorney and the firm's reputation is verifying the facts contained in the complaint. And the way they do that is they send private investigative teams down to the Dominican Republic to interview employees, come back with deeds and understanding about hotel ownership and understanding about bank accounts. And then we file. So the whole thing costs $1.4 million. I've got 644 plaintiffs. The law firm divides us into two groups. If you're an agent for my company and own the product, you're in one group. If you're not an agent of my company, but you own the product, you're in a different group. Two law firms financed by me, representing two separate groups of people in one suit. So very expensive, very complicated. We file in federal court in Miami, the Dominican Republic, and Canada. The same lawsuit gets served in all jurisdictions. So now we've got...
the Elliots are from Canada.
Yeah, the Elliots live in Toronto, Canada. That's their home base, and they're Canadian citizens. So we are now underway. Now, you can imagine when they get word that they're being sued, this is not a secret matter anymore. I'm now enemy number one. So they send a letter, Brent, to all clients. James Catledge and his organization have misrepresented the products you've purchased. We need to hear from you directly so that we can fix the wrongs that have happened to you. So basically, it's the sales organization that's the problem. It's not the developer. It's not the management of money.
Crazy salesmen. Those crazy salesmen misrepresented
wild
again.
Sales guys. And everybody knows sales guys are rogue. And everybody knows sales guys exaggerate and say things that are not true to earn a commission. So the judge knows this too. So it's a hell of a defense. It's really a good defense.
Good one.
Because
good
it
one.
divides my 644.
Plays right into the stereotype.
Yeah, it divides my 644 people.
Right.
And then it gives the judge the impetus to be able to have a reason to dismiss the case and encourage everyone to refile separately. And then the judge refers. A judicial referral from a federal judge is heavy when it goes to the Department of Justice, to the IRS, and to the Securities and Exchange Commission. For those of you listening at home who don't understand this, that means 3 federal agencies that wear windbreakers that have their initials on the back are all headed my direction. Now, this is my lawsuit. This is the project that I sold all this.
You paid for it.
Yeah, I paid for the lawsuit. I've literally I'm not a victim here. Right. My company made $36 million in the selling of these projects. And I certainly got my commissions, and my team got theirs, and my company employees got theirs. So there can be no doubt James was paid. James's salespeople were paid. So, and we really do have, the victims occur, and the reason there's real victims is their real estate is now at jeopardy. Their real estate and the yield from that real estate is also in jeopardy. So that's where we get into victimization. That's where we get into why they're a permanent victim. because the lawsuit, when the judge threw it out, all of a sudden the banks that are loaning money to the Elliots in the Dominican seized control of these properties because they've got liens against commitments the Elliots have made on the island. And so now my United States citizen clients are hung up with Elliott liens tied to their property in the Dominican Republic. And so now we got permanent victims. And so the Department of Justice decides, after a 3-year investigation from 2009 to 2012, they decide that they're going to indict 2 people, James Catledge, the head of the sales organization, and Derek Elliott, the head of the development company. So dual indictments for multiple counts of mail fraud, oddly, mail fraud. So that's how the indictment went down.
That is fascinating that you brought that lawsuit. You brought it over. I didn't know the thing with Rusty before that. Yeah. And then you go and you file a lawsuit, and then it gets broken up, and then you've got a special master in there that becomes a part of this. What happens next?
Well, I can tell you this, retrospectively, I wouldn't change a single thing I did. I mean, I literally have thought about this for 15 years.
I mean, what else would you have done?
Well, my attorney, my criminal defense attorney, which I later have to hire, but the criminal defense attorney suggested that it was my civil suit that brought all of this pain. It was my filing of that suit that brought me to the arms of justice. And
well, I mean, it put a red hot light on it.
It did.
They didn't even know about it. You're the one that was providing the box of stuff.
I ran across the street with the box. I mean,
check this out. This big box of stuff
I got.
we don't really have time to look at it.
All the heat. So, but I'll tell you right now, I'm the one that delivered the clients to the Dominican Republic. I have no option, Brent. And there is no other path for me. I'm not the type of guy that can just move on and say, you guys work it out, sue if you want, and we'll defend the suits. That's not my style.
How long, James, does it take from the time that you went into that courtroom for the civil case for the 1.4 million you spent, and then it gets all jumbled up to when you get the criminal indictment?
2.5 years.
Okay, 2.5 years. Then you get indicted.
Yep.
Okay, let's take it from there. What happens once you get indicted?
Well, just prior to the indictment, when I'm trying to be proactive, man, my mind is proactive. I'm trying to be ahead.
And it feels like you're on molasses when you get into all this stuff. Everybody's moving too slow. Your attorney's not doing what you're asking them to do.
Exactly.
I told you to check this out.
Right.
Did you read that? Did you read my email that I sent you?
I don't think
you're
paying attention. Document? Right, exactly. That's exactly how I felt. Everybody's moving in quicksand, and I'm up on the shoreline saying, hey, guys, we got stuff to look at here.
Right,
So
exactly.
The moment the judge, Alan Gold, the federal judge of Miami, did the judicial referral to the 3 agencies, I now know I need to hire a criminal defense attorney. Right. I convinced my criminal defense attorney to take me to San Francisco, where the case had been assigned, to spend 14 hours with the prosecutor and the 2 FBI agents. Now, he did not want to do this meeting, my guy. He says, this is the stupidest thing I've ever been involved in. You may be the stupidest client I've ever had. James,
you don't know what you're doing.
Why I'm doing this.
You don't know what you're doing, James.
Yeah, and you've prepaid me. So if you want to be a fool here, I'm going to let you be a fool. And this meeting, we've signed documents so that they can't arrest you during the meeting. But I'm telling you, this ain't a great idea. And I am so certain that I can lead them to all the mischief, and that I can guide them to where I think things may have gone wrong, and that I can help them uncover what they need to uncover to make sure my clients don't suffer any further. That is my entire objective with all this. And nowhere in my mind are they going to twist this into my wrongdoing? And there's not an email, there's not a text, there is no plan for me to climb in a smoke-filled room with Derek Elliott and figure out a conspiracy to steal people's money. It's not only is it not in me, that didn't occur. It didn't happen.
No, there was no, it didn't ever happen.
It didn't happen. And by the way, why would it need to happen? I've been paid $36 million.
You're doing great.
Exactly. And here's the other thing. Why would I want to disrupt the gravy train?
Going along really well.
In place. There's
exactly.
more hotels to build.
Yeah, more inventory. We're looking at more inventory.
Right. One of the things
I want to say this though too, because there's a lot going on. You're a dad of 6.
6 kids, man.
And you've got a wife that is riding along on this train.
23 years married.
What's going on in that world at the time that you're going to be with the Justice Department of San Francisco, the agents or whatever? What's happening on the other side of your world?
Hey, man, my children are not old enough to even conceive of what a criminal complaint is. They're not old enough to understand
They're little
what the
kids.
Department of Justice is. They're literally, my wife at the time, she literally is in tears almost 8 hours a day. It's anytime she sees me in our home, she wants to know, when is it over? When is this over? Is the meeting in San Francisco with the FBI, is that when it's going to be over? I thought the courtroom in Miami is where it would be over. Well, I know you did nothing wrong. We own this stupid product. So what is going on? I thought I married a smart guy here. When I got involved with you, not only did you convince me that you were smart, but I actually believed it. So why are we in this mess? How did you possibly get us in this mess? This is her perspective, Brent.
Yeah, no, I wanted to ask that because it's a big part of your world when you're going through this. And a lot of times us guys, we get off and we talk about this other side, but we know as we look back on it, we were dealing with a whole nother world. Now my kids were older, they were teenagers and one was in college. And so they were experiencing it a different way than a young kid, but they always experience it because the kids will then grow into it and then find out about it as they get older. But okay, I just wanted to loop back around, but going back to that meeting now that you weren't supposed to have, that your attorney didn't want to go to.
Yes.
What happened with
14 hours on the tape, on recording. We're transcribing the whole thing. We have a transcriber. They have a transcriber. And I get face to face with the 2 agents who did the investigation to determine the indictment. So I got a face to face with these gentlemen to understand who they are and what are they up to. Because for the life of me, I can't figure out, what are you up to? Like, what is it?
What are you doing?
What is the objective here?
Right.
Are we trying to uncover the truth? Or are you just looking to do something different?
It's a notch in the belt for another conviction with a big name, with big headlines.
That. In my mind, I just didn't believe in conspiracy theories. I didn't believe in this idea that there's this world where indicting people that may not have committed a crime was kind of in the cards. I just thought, if you've been indicted, you damn well did it. And whatever they said
you know what, James, you just brought up something really so absolutely spot on. Actually, most people think indictment and conviction are the same thing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And it kind of almost is. I mean, when we say that, because somebody says you're indicted, they think you're convicted. But in the real world of the United States of America, if you are indicted, 96, 97% of the people plea out because of all the things surrounding this. Very, very, very few people go to trial. So that's why indictment and conviction are almost the same.
96% conviction rate on an indictment when it's the federal government. And the 4% who dare go to trial, 84% of those are convicted in trial.
Yes.
So we're talking about
there was a guy that was on this show in the first season. He was in the mortgage business, and he said, you can go to trial, but he said it's kind of like the LA Dodgers playing your beer softball league team. It's probably not going to end up very good.
No, it's not going to end up good. My attorney said to me, the words he used were, several lethal bullets have been fired at you. They are lethal. So
what happens after this 14-hour meeting?
they said, we'll get back to you. And so we go months. And I would say 11 months after that meeting. Now, my attorney, of course, is staying in touch, but nothing's happening. I'm convinced that they now know enough to not include me in whatever shenanigans they're involved in. And there is no indictment yet. They come to me and they said, we want you to cooperate against Derek Elliott. And in exchange for that, we'll give you 11 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, 11 years of what? And they're talking about prison, which for the life of me, Brent, I don't know how we're jumping to that. I have no idea how we're getting there. Like, I'm the guy that reported these people. I own this stuff. My mother owns it. What are you talking about, prison?
I took the box to Rusty.
Yeah, I took the box across the street to Rusty Marsh. Yes. And by the way, in the end, Rusty Marsh, God love Rusty Marsh, signed an affidavit explaining all of this detail in rich detail so that my federal sentencing judge would see it and understand. And that was an important moment in the end. Yeah, but I keep thinking they're going to call and say, hey, we made an error here. Our bad, completely inconvenient. As far as we're concerned, you can wash your hands of this. I kept thinking that was the meeting we were going to have. And every time my attorney called out, well, this is it. This is where he's going to explain it, the apology. No, that meeting's not coming. And if you're in the middle of a pre-indictment scenario and you're crossing your fingers, that call ain't coming. It is not coming. So get your mind right and prepare yourself to negotiate, because that call is never coming. So I remember another call. I'm waiting outside. My son is lifting weights. He's on the football team and he's got a trainer. And the gym is a ways from our home. And so when I take him, I've got to park in the parking lot and kind of wait the hour while he does the workout. So we're in Southern California. I usually use that time to make calls. And so I'm in the car. And I remember on this day, this is a day that we're going to hear from the prosecutor. They want to discuss with us a new deal. Okay. And so I'm hoping that I can do it within this hour. Well, we get on the phone. We got all the FBI guys. We got the prosecutor. We got my 3 lawyers. And then we got, my son is in the gym with his trainer. And I need this thing to kind of go fast. I don't need this thing protracted where my little boy can get back in the car.
Comes back in the car, right.
And I can't hang up early.
Right,
so this is all got to go down while he's in there. It's very emotional. The bifurcation of my life is in this parking lot, literally. Well, I dialed the number. We've looked this thing high and low. The prosecutor says, we've looked this over. We know your guy's not the bad guy here. But he did, we believe, know that the Elliots were skimming. We believe he did know this, that, and the other. And we believe this, and we believe that. Of course, all his beliefs are not founded in any evidence whatsoever, because I know there's no evidence of that. And then he says, my attorney, that's the sad part, my attorney doesn't know what the evidence is. He's just got to believe they do. And so when I talk to him, he thinks I'm a liar. And he's sure they know, because they're going to take a case to trial. So they're more believable than I am, which is really bad. Well, they then get to the final offer, which is, and it ain't going to get any better. From here forward, it's going up. You need to understand, James Catledge, from here forward, it's going up.
Or just take it off the table. That's another one. Just take it off the table altogether. Right. Just forget it.
The fact we're even doing a deal is a courtesy to you.
Exactly.
8.5 years is what we're willing to let you do. And that's because we see enough here to understand you could be helpful to us in prosecuting Derek Elliott. And so we're going to give you 8.5 years, but you've got 24 hours to respond to this. And you've got to admit to all these things that we've got written up. And so
even the monster details we have in there, you're just going to have to choke those down and accept that.
The things that
we need that.
The things that are completely lies, you're going to have to say,
It's just part of it. That's just part of the deal.
That's right. That's right. So
we know you don't like that. That's stuff that I know you don't agree with, but you're going to eat it.
Yeah, that's right. That's the way it's going to be. That's part of the deal. So we hang up. I got about 15 minutes left. My attorney calls me direct. He says, all right, what do you want to do? I said, what do you mean? What do I want to do? What I want to do is the amount of time that innocent guy does. That's what I want to do. That's exactly the amount of time I want you to negotiate for. The amount of time.
And I want you to feel that, Mr. Attorney.
Right. That's right. What I want to do. So why is it you called me? And he says, because we have to discuss the deal. I said, there is no deal. This deal's going to trial. There is no deal. I said, this is insane on the surface. And how you don't see how you with a straight face can even say this to me is crazy. And he said, James, I believe you're delusional. I believe you're completely delusional. I believe you do not understand the moment. You do not understand the moment you're in. Right. And I said, that may very well be, but you do. And you know your client's innocent. And the idea that you would want him to accept a deal for 8.5 years, I find that to be
robbery, malpractice.
It's terrible. And so this is the discussion we had on that day. And so it then goes several more years.
Several more years?
2018.
And these guys say you've got 24 hours to accept this.
Well, we tell them no.
I know, but I'm just saying, but it was, we were in a hurry at that point.
Yes.
And we several more years.
That's correct. So, listen, we're in 2013, them messing with me post indictment, trying to get me to do a deal. It goes to 2018. We're 2 weeks from trial. And my attorney says, James, you've got a lot of good facts. I said, right. It's the truth are usually good facts. They're very convenient in a moment.
How are you living? I don't want to gloss over this. How are you living in those years between 13 and 18?
Hey, listen, I'm not going to divulge too much on your podcast. You and I can have a private discussion about this, but I will tell you this. What you just said was very difficult. We moved from our $4.5 million home in the Bridges. We put that in a pile of cash. We sold it and put it in a pile of cash, did a global settlement for all civil litigation for that home. We're now leasing homes in the children's school district so they can go to church at the same place, so they can still be with their friends at school. We got them in middle school, elementary school, and one starting high school. So
it's a lot.
Brent, there'll be a day soon enough where we can get into surviving an indictment, right. Because that's what was going on. That's literally what was going on.
Yep. Well, I know you and I talked a little bit about that, and I was in 3 years of waiting, a pretrial, and that's a weird time period to live your life. Just your family.
It's a cloud
doing
that won't
working
go
wise.
away.
And you wake up with it, you go to bed with it. And it's just a thing that's
it's got the ability to destroy you.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And there were in my own podcast, I do an audio version in 20-minute segments where I unveil some of this psychological torture for people who may be suffering like this and what they can do about it, because I had to live through it. And there were. Hey, man.
Well, there's only two choices to it. You either just survive it and it's horrific and it's a nightmare, or you end it. And,
correct.
And some people do that.
Plenty end it. Yes. Yep. Yeah, those are the two choices. And then, if you're gonna survive it, and that's your choice, if you decide to do that, you now get to decide what you want it to look like on the backside of it. Because now every choice you make, if you're going to survive it, now every choice you make dictates what the backside of this will look like.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so that began to be very important to me once I decided in my garage late one night that I'm going to do this. And one day this will all be over What will that day look like? And if that day is eventually going to come, let's go and live like that now. And so that began to build momentum for me, restore my spirit, and began to attract the right people into my life to frankly buoy me, strengthen me, and become the mentors in this phase of my life.
Man, I like that a lot. So after all these years go by, how does it come down to, we talked about it last week on the phone, but can you tell us, James, how this all comes down to where you finally get your deal?
Yes. The controller of the Elliott Resorts, who managed the money, came forward about 6 months prior to this sentencing, the final window where I'm going to do the deal. 6 months prior, he called me and he said, "Are you still dealing with all that?" He was kind of in hiding, hoping he wouldn't be involved or implicated. And he said, "Are you still dealing with all that?" And I said, "God, yes, I'm still dealing with all. Where the hell have you been?" "Yes, I'm still dealing." And this guy knows, Brent. He knows I'm not guilty of anything. He's the one that paid us our commissions. He's the one that paid our clients. He knows what the Elliott
knows all the backroom stuff.
Yeah, he knows it all. And I said, his name is Tomas. I said, "Tomas, are you willing to help me?" He goes, "What can I do?" And I said, "Well, you need to fly to San Francisco and meet with my attorneys on the record. And I don't know the formality of that, if it's going to be videoed or audio recorded or it's just notes, but I need you to go forward on the record, man. It would save me. It literally would save me, because right now they think I'm equally involved with Derek Elliott. They think that somehow he and I decided he would get 80% and I would get 20%. I said, I have no idea who would sign up for that if they're involved in a scheme. If minimum, it's 50-50. And if you're raising the money, it ought to be 80-20. I said, but that is not the current belief on the lay of the land. I need your help, Tomas. He says, "I'll do it." Now, this is
wow. You talk about a lifeline.
This is risky on his part.
Sure it is.
He's an Elliott employee.
Yeah.
Or was. The Elliott Corporation fell apart shortly after our lawsuit. But he's a former Elliott employee for sure. He has some contingent liability here. So my attorney coaxes him into coming to San Francisco. My attorney preps the prosecutor, preps the FBI agents. We get into a room with me, my attorney, the same group that I met with for 14 hours, and a stenographer that reports to the federal judge that's overseeing my case. There's a video camera on in the room. Now, my attorney's got a binder with tabs full of great questions because we're prepared for trial. They have maybe 2 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper on the other side. They have not prepared for trial. That's what I know sitting in this room. They are not ready for a trial. They still think they're going to get a deal. It's obvious
they always
by
do.
The preparation of this meeting. Well, Tomas spills all the beans, explains to everybody in the room that when the Catledge would come down with his team, they'd double up on construction. When Catledge would leave, they'd thin back out the construction. They were putting on a show for me. And of course, you can't be involved in a conspiracy if they're trying to put on a show for you. So he explains all that. My attorney's follow-up questions are just nailing these points. There's a couple of moments where we do a timeout and leave the room, leaving Thomas in there while the prosecutor and my attorney say, "Hey, what are we doing? It's pretty obvious, man. You got an innocent guy here. Are we really talking about taking him to trial?" And so those are the type of discussion. Finally, the momentum shifted here. So we get done. Tomas back to his hotel. I'm back to Vegas from San Francisco. My attorney calls and says, "Listen, I think I can do a new deal." I said, "A new deal? This isn't over? What are you talking about, a new deal?" He goes, "Look, we're going to trial. And Tomas's testimony will be a part of the trial. We got it all recorded. The judge wanted this recorded. We're going to use it at trial. And the jury may love it. And the jury may not love it. And the jury's going to hate the fact you made $36 million. And the jury's going to see 12 victims up in the witness box who lost their money.
Right.
And the jury's going to hear about how often you golf. And the jury's going to hear about your airplane and that you're rich and they're poor. And so if you want to play those cards, James, you play a different kind of card game than I do. That is not a winning hand. And this is sadly not about the truth, man. This is not about the truth. This is about an escape route that allows you to get your life back. Yes.
So the moment comes, James, and your attorney says it's go time. This is it. Next week's trial.
Yeah.
And you're thinking what?
I can't believe it's come to this. I've not even searched prisons
Right.
on my computer. I've never even looked up a prison. I don't know anybody who's been to prison. I mean, what are we talking about here? I kept waiting for the day they would roll over the paper and say,
done. Our mistake. Sorry.
Totally our mistake.
Sorry for the hassle.
Yeah, we're so sorry for all this. Nope. That day never came, was never going to come. I just need to get my mind around the idea that this is happening. Yeah. And I've got to figure out a way to manage it.
James, I want to say something that's not, and I know that people listening to this, some people have dealt with the system. Some people are just dealing with things in their own life, but a lot of people have a hard time believing that until the night before I was going down to plead guilty, it had never occurred to me, because I had been fighting for 6 years. Oh my God, I'm going to be a felon. I'm going to be an ex-felon. I'm going to go to prison. And I had not dealt with that because I had spent all my energy on fighting the case. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like when guys are fighting stuff like that, it's like, it's hard to believe that you really haven't dealt with that, but you can't deal with that because that's not space that you want to go to or live in or be a part of. But then when you finally hit it, it's like, bam, wow.
Yeah. I think this is a success trait, truthfully. It's one of those where there's probably a whole group of people who actually are willing to think about the downside of every scenario and yeah, not me. I'm only thinking about winning and what winning looks like and how it's defined. Right. And any surrender in the other direction is risking the victory.
Exactly. Bring you down.
Yeah. So bottom line is here's what happens. He says, I'm going to go negotiate for 5 years with a cap. And I think they'll do it based on what just occurred with Tomas in San Francisco. And I said, you know what? For the first time in all these years, I feel inclined to say, go do it.
Go do it.
Get it done.
And it is the
first time I felt inclined to that direction. I called my mother as soon as I hung up with David, my attorney, David Chesnoff. As soon as I hung up with David, I called my mother and I said, Mom, now she's been on this ride from day one. I said, Mom, I'm going to run something by you. I want your opinion on it. And I explained to her this current lay of the land. And she said, son, I feel good about it. I feel good about it. I said, what? I said, you feel good about your son going to prison? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about agreeing to go to prison, not fighting it. We're now surrendering to
giving it to them, right?
Yes. She said, I can't explain why I feel that way, but I think it's right. I feel like it's the right moment. It's the right time. And you got to end this, son. You got to end this. It's been too long. It's too long. And so with that tacit approval, I felt strongly that I'd made the right decision. This was almost a confirmation.
Yeah.
So I waited, I guess it was probably 2 days. David and the team, they always call me as a team when they're trying to talk me into something.
Right.
David calls me for announcements, but if they got to move me, they call as a team. And clearly they've strategized. You're going to say this, you're going to say this, and I'm going to hit heavy on this. You can tell it's been a team approach with dealing with this crazy guy, Catledge. So they called me and they said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Yep, I'm sitting down, but whatever you got to say, I can handle standing up."
Right.
He said, "We got a deal." I said, "Explain to me exactly the deal." He says, "We got a 5-year cap. No matter what the judge thinks or says, it's capped at 5. We have the right to argue down to 0. And they're going to resist that. That's part of the deal. They're agreeing to fight you to 5, and we're agreeing to fight them to 0. I said, "Well, what about this statement of facts? We can't agree to this. This is false.
Right.
I'm not going to say to a judge that this occurred because it did not. I won't do that." And he said, "Well, James, the 4 corners of the law require us to do some very specific things here. So why don't you let me kind of figure out how to work with them on this, and we can get it." I said, "Listen, I promise you, you're not putting me. You don't want to have me in front of a judge with my arm to the square, swearing to things that are not. I actually won't do it. So we need to come up with language that I can say I did." He says, "You got that?" He says, "You have that language?" I said, "I do not, but you guys, this is your profession. I'm sure we can work this out." He goes, "Let me call him real quick. Stand by." He calls him back. He goes, "They're willing to let us write the statement of facts." Now, you know how rare this is.
That's really rare.
They're willing to let us write the statement of facts. And this becomes the way they can affix a law that I broke to the 1 count of mail fraud they're going to hang me with. 1 count of mail fraud. And then they need it to be within the 4 corners of the actual statute of the law, the criminal justice books. And they're going to let us write it. And so I won't bother you with this, but we went through a thesaurus of words, trying to gymnastically figure out how to say one thing and mean another. I mean, it was just nauseous. And finally came down with the fact that I agreed that I helped Derek Elliott write emails or construct emails that would go out to the clients that had a propensity to persuade them into the fraud. And I'll tell you what those emails, we had actual emails where I had told Derek, if you're going to send the checks to the client and you're going to do an updated newsletter, please include photographs, please include
Give them an update.
spa updates, the elevators, all the new stuff that's been, please include. So they had plenty of emails where I helped the Elliots construct a continuation of the mail fraud.
And you could say that was something you did because you thought that they should be updated and know what's going on. Right.
Yes.
Right.
And to this day, I would do it again.
Right.
I would want the clients completely updated
Sure.
On everything where their money's going. That was the hardest part, Brent.
Yeah.
Is I'm actually spending money, taking extraordinary risk, fighting for the very clients who are looking to put me in prison. Exactly. And it really turned ugly. I had folks showing up at my kids' football games, my kids' athletic events with the fat head where they can do a picture of you. I had the fat head showing up at my kids' sports events. I mean, it was too much for my wife to bear.
Oh,
I can tell you that. Tiffany could not bear this. And, some of us have bandwidth that we don't quite know how broad it is until it's tested. Yeah. I understood her bandwidth was narrow. And she did not have the emotional bandwidth to withstand this. This was too much. And I don't fault her for it. No. Our divorce was created through this extraordinary trial. Yeah.
So what happens on the day of? Because if I remember, there's some more movement things that happen with the attorney.
I've agreed to 5 years, and I'm going to argue for less. But I can do 5. I've made that. I'm now
exactly
researching
the same deal that I had, which is crazy.
I'm researching, doing time. I'm meeting with Michael Santos. Okay. I've driven to Newport Beach and had several meetings with Michael Santos. I'm meeting with other people who've been inside. I'm now gathering my expertise on
Right.
doing time.
How am I
I'm
going
a-
to eat this elephant?
yeah,
Right.
that's right. If I'm going to do time, I'm going to do it well.
Yeah.
And so I'm just doing what I can do within my power
Yeah.
to come up to speed on this.
Yeah.
So
Now I'm going to tackle this task. Right.
yes, yeah, and I'm going to self surrender. I've got 90 days. She gives me 90 days to self surrender, and so we're going to now be sentenced. So I kind of know what we've agreed to. So this is a formality.
Okay.
I've got my mother there, my brother there, and about 35 friends who have flown in from across the United States.
Be
Some
there,
work for me,
support you.
some are friends, some are actually victims.
Right. Right.
Just good folks who know the truth. So we're all gathered there, and then the victims are there too. There's always a dozen
Oh yeah.
victims.
Yeah.
Any movement on my case, they're sitting there. So the judge begins the sentencing, and she says, "I don't know how we got here." Now this is all the transcript. I have no idea how we got here. I don't like it. This man has said he's been innocent for 8 years. I've read everything submitted to this court. Unless you're hiding documents from the court, I don't know how you got here. I don't know how he agreed to 5, and I don't know how you let him agree to 5. You think he stole $180 million, and you think he's innocent.
Right.
You're willing to give him 5. You're willing to let him have 5. I don't understand what you guys are doing. This sounds like a completely compromised situation. You got an innocent guy who deserves his facts before a jury. So I'm of the opinion this man deserves his facts in front of a jury. This has taken too long. He's resisted too long. And the idea in this late hour that you would come up with some grand bargain is suspicious. And my attorney, who does this for a living, says, Your Honor, we've worked hard on this deal. Mr. Catledge is agreeing to 60 months, but would like to negotiate for less. The prosecutors worked very hard on this deal for many, many years. There's been FBI agents put a lot of hours in on this. We're finally at the end. Mr. Elliott pled guilty 7, 8 years ago. He's waiting for his punishment based on how this turns out. So, we're here to end this today. And she says, well, not so fast, not so fast. She says, is this how they do it in Vegas? She insults him on his Vegas background. Is this how they do things in Vegas? It's not how we do them here. I'm going to meet with my clerks in my chamber and find out if I have to accept this deal, because I'm inclined to not accept this deal. Wow. And what I'd like you guys to do is go out in the hallway and discuss amongst yourself a different situation, because I'm not liking this at all. The Constitution doesn't have anything in there about this. The Constitution gives this guy a chance to clear his name. Right. And
she's seen all the filings for the last 8 years or whatever it's been. Yeah. That she don't want to see this all just thrown away. She wants the facts before the jury.
Yeah, right. She's read enough about my defenses. She likes them. Yeah. And she even says on the record, this is a sales agent.
Wait, I got to tell you something, James, before we go any further with that. That is unusual, because for the most part, your federal judge is going to be a previous prosecutor.
Yes.
Possibly U.S. whatever those could be. And this isn't really normal for a judge to step into an
totally abnormal.
Yes.
Completely abnormal. Yes. I had a jailhouse lawyer who I did time with, who became a good friend, actually read my transcript. He said, I've never seen anything like this. He said, this is crazy. He said, don't ever get rid of this. He said, this tells you the story.
That's right.
This lady understood
your
role in this.
He was baiting you to go to trial.
Yeah. She wanted me to go. And my mother's sitting there thinking, oh, this is so good. This judge understands my son and the whole situation, So we go out in the hallway, Brent. My attorney is face to face with the prosecutor. And of course, they worked hard on this. And everybody has. And I step out there. I said, guys, what are we doing? And my attorney rolls around toward me and he says, you're going back in there and you're doubling down and you're letting her know this is what you want. She's willing to do what you want. She trusts you. She thinks in your favor. So she needs to know you're okay with this. Right now, she thinks we've
It's strong
corrupted
armed, right?
the situation. And you got, hey, listen, this ain't about us. I'm going back to my law firm, and he's going back to his office to prosecute somebody else.
Right.
So this is about you. This is about you getting back to your life. So you got to do this, James. You're facing 28 years if this goes to trial and you lose on one count. You're a leader. You're head of an organization. You're sophisticated in your means. Those are all aggravating elements that go into the sentencing that put you in a U.S. penitentiary to begin your time. And he says, everyone in there will know you're innocent. And for 28 years, you can scream it inside the yard of that facility. But that's no life, man. That's no life. We've got to go in there and we got to tell this judge, this is what you want. So I kind of agree with this. I am moved by their discussion. I go back in. She's at the bench. She sees me. She says, come up here to the bench. Now, I have a podium I'm supposed to be at with a microphone. She wants me at the bench where I'm not on the mic. She doesn't want my family to hear this, and she doesn't want the victims to hear this. She moves the microphone aside. She says, what do you want to do? And I said, I feel terrible about what's occurred. I'm going to plead guilty today. She said, very well. Puts the mic back. She says, stand back over there where everybody can hear you. And then she proceeds with a very formal approach to sentencing me to 60 months.
60 months.
60 months. And so I left there. She gave me 90 days to surrender. As a side note, I watched Tiger Woods win the Masters.
Yeah.
4 days before
2019, right?
That's right, before I surrendered. And I self-surrendered to the facility in Taft, California, federal camp. And
Well, I want to get into that and how you handled that. You had some time to think about it. Before we do, I want to, a lot of people don't like how they show up online. Many individuals think there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation online. Well, there is hope. It's called the Discoverability Company. They can help you. Whether you're building a reputation from scratch, repairing your search results after a negative news story, Discoverability can also help how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co, not .com, .co. They're even launching a do-it-yourself SEO option, a course for individuals who want to take on their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO course with coupon code Nightmare Success. And I wanted to say that Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. Join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to prisonist.org, prisonist.org. So you finally get to the space you thought you'd never be, James. You're voluntarily surrendering your freedom.
Yeah.
And walk us through that.
Yeah, I've emptied my condominium. My boys helped me do that. We put it all in storage. I'm divorced now, living on my own, and I drive to Las Vegas from San Diego, where I was living near my family, and I'm going to stay one night with my mom, and then my mom and my brother are going to drive me to Taft, California, and say bye. So it's April 19th of 2000. 19. We drive to Bakersfield, stay the night at the Best Western. I show up at 11 a.m. the next day to self-surrender. You surrender to a low facility prison where they've got the means to receive you in intake. I walk through the front doors of my family. We sit in a lobby waiting for an officer to meet us. Officer, big fella, comes around the corner. He's probably 6'5", 215 pounds. Big. I'm 6 foot tall, probably 190. This dude's enormous. I've called ahead to figure out what I can bring. Basically, I can bring my Bible. I can bring a sheet of paper with my contacts on it. And if I've got eyeglasses, and I didn't at the time, I
didn't either. I got that while I was in.
I did too. I got my readers inside. Another inmate gave me my readers. So basically, I got nothing other than my Bible and a piece of paper. And so this guy standing behind a podium in the lobby, he tells my family, you guys can go, say your goodbyes, make it quick. We got some work to do here. I say goodbye to my family. They go out one door. I'm back in here with this guy. He has me take all my clothes off, put me in an orange jumpsuit. He has me squat and cough. Apparently that is a way to determine if I've hidden weapons in my inner cavities. I did not know that until this moment, but that's apparently why they have you squat and cough. I am handcuffed for the first time behind my back. I am measured on the wall how tall I am. They develop an ID for me. They DNA swab me. Then they roll me around into a processing center where I'm going to meet with a counselor, a medical technician, a nurse, and then by the way, between each of these visits, I'm waiting in a concrete cell.
That's right.
For this person to arrive. This is all preconditioning.
You have no idea how long you're going to be there. Nobody says anything to you about anything.
5 minutes.
No.
They say nothing.
Nothing.
But sit there.
Right.
Yeah, you've lost control. By the way, the first
and I think that's all by design, don't you, James?
It is. Yeah, this is designed to train me that I'm now not in charge.
You no longer have control. We no longer will give you information when you want it.
That's it. I'm no longer in charge of anything.
Right.
Other than what goes on right here.
That's right.
And that becomes pretty damn important.
Very important.
Yeah. And when you're in charge of nothing but that, you better get good at that.
Better get really good at that.
Yeah. So I realized real quickly, that's all I got is control of my spirit, my drive, and my soul. What goes on right here is now all I've got. It's all I've got left because they've taken everything else. So I'm in there and I'm thinking about what it's going to be like at the camp because I really don't know. I've not been in a camp before.
Yeah, maybe this is it.
Right. This
maybe they just messed up my paperwork and here's where I'm going to be.
Well, I did have that fear.
Well, no, I think everybody does. I did.
This facility may be the one I'm stuck in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, they finished with me medically. Everything seems okay. And if, every inconvenience from needing to use the restroom to, just a question or two you might have, all these are huge putouts for them.
That's right.
You need to go to the bathroom is like a huge putout or ordeal for them. And so we get through all of these inconveniences and we're several hours into this and a big burly guy, looks like he's from ZZ Top, comes back. He's tattooed to hell. He comes back and he says, "You ready to go?" I said, "Yes, sir." And this is about as cordial of a conversation as I've had yet right here. "You ready to go?" This is as friendly as it's gotten.
Right.
So I'm following this guy through this maze of doors opening and keys unlocking, motorized doors opening, all this. I realize I've been encased in this place as they begin to unlock all this stuff to get me out of there with him. We walk right out the front door I came in. There's a little pickup truck out there. I'm in my orange jumpsuit still. There's an there's a little Datsun pickup truck. And this big guy doesn't even look like he will fit in the Datsun. As it turns out, this vehicle belongs to the camp. He gets in the driver's seat. He tells me to get in the passenger seat. Now, this is, we're in a vehicle in front of the low security facility. And he says, in a gruff way, he says to me, "You doing okay?" And I said, he literally is expressing some concern about my well-being.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I'm doing fine. And I really don't know if it's a loaded question.
Right, exactly.
I'm assuming it is. So I said, yeah, I'm doing fine. He goes, "Are you nervous?" I said, yeah, for sure. Very nervous. He said, "You shouldn't be." I said, okay, good. He says, the finest people, this is what he says, "The finest people I've met in my life are back at that camp." So that's who you're going to be with. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you got to get out more. These are the finest people this guy knows. They're in a prison. And I'm thinking, oh my God. But in a really weird way, I thought this guy's endorsing people back there.
It calmed you down. Yeah.
Yeah. He views them as quality people. And so I challenge him on this in a non-challenging way. And we're driving around the low, all this high security fencing, the razor wire up top. There's a couple of towers with guarded, guys with guns at the top of these towers. We're moving past all of this. And he says, "You're going to be okay back there. Nothing to worry about." He says, "I was looking at your file. You went to BYU." I said, "I did." And I'm thinking, oh God, here comes the Mormon jokes or whatever. And he says, "I got a daughter at BYU."
Oh, great. Good.
I said, "Oh, that's great." And I feel immediate relief,
Yes.
Immediate. And he says, "Oh yeah, she loved it, man. She loved it." And he said, "What'd you do?" He wants to know what I did. I said, "I didn't do a damn thing." He said, you didn't do it." He said, "Then why are you here?" I said, "Because I agreed to be here." And we have this discussion on the way back. He doesn't get out until he finishes hearing. He wants to hear
the story.
How a guy from BYU is being taken to the camp. So I tell him, he goes, "That's one hell of a story, man." He said, "You know what? I believe it." He said, "There's a lot of guys back here who probably didn't do it." He said, you're going to meet them." He goes, "A lot of guys did, and they'll tell you they did."
Right.
He says, "But there's a bunch that didn't." He said, "This is just the way it is, man. Just the way it is." He's explaining this to me. And again, he does look like he's with ZZ Top, the group. and he hands me my change of clothes. And as a courtesy, he says, "You want to change in these before you go back in there?" Because they look a little more casual than this orange jumpsuit. I said, "Sure. Where do I change?" So he shows me, it's kind of off the visitation room. There's a bathroom. He said, "Just change in there." He said, "And then I'll tell you what to do." So this guy's being real courteous with me.
Yeah.
Real courteous.
And a ZZ Top looking guy. And for those that are listening down in the Cayman Islands that have never heard of ZZ Top, they're the guys with the long hair, the handlebar, long mustaches and beards. Quite the deal in the 80s.
Guitars and sing.
Yeah, really big deal at one point.
Yes, yeah, it's like a rock band.
Yeah.
So he lets me change my clothes, and I come back out and he goes, "Now here's what, I'm not going to walk you down there. This will look ridiculous." He said, "You're going to be fine." And he points. Now the courtyard is probably 120, 150 yards through the courtyard, down a sidewalk to my housing unit. Okay. He says, "You're in 32 low." I'll never forget. That's exactly where I was. He goes, "You're in 32 low." He says, "You go back there and there'll be an inmate. See that you're new. You're wearing blue shoes." He knows you're new. You're the only guy wearing blue shoes, by the way. So they'll know you're new. Everybody standing up there knows you're new. He goes, "There's a lot of guys back there trying to be helpful." He goes, "They'll tell you where 32 low is. That's your address. You set up camp there, and then you go to laundry and get your sheets and this stuff. And I promise you, there's inmates there looking to help you." So I did it, and I can tell you this, Brent, and you know you've done this. As I cut loose from the camp control, and I'm making that walk by myself, this is it. I've arrived at the moment I thought would never occur.
Ever happen. Right.
And I'm here. And I decided, and I've done this a few times in my life, I pulled my shoulders back, lifted my chin up, and I walked back with a great deal of confidence, talking myself into this. You can do this. This is just another environment.
You're built for this. You're built for this. That's right.
Yeah. So by the time I get to my housing unit, there's a guy there named Johnny Walker who meets me as I come through the glass doors. Yeah. I know it's the same name as the alcohol.
Yeah.
Johnny Walker. And he's as dynamic a personality
as his
that name would indicate. So I walked through the doors. I thought he was a greeter. He's so on it. I thought this is his prison job. And it's not his prison job. He's just looking for the new guy. Yeah. So I walked through. Johnny Walker says, "Where are you headed?" I said, 32 Low. He goes, "Come with me." I followed Johnny Walker to 32 Low. It happens to be conveniently located directly across from the restrooms, otherwise known as Flushing Meadows. So all night
you're not going to believe this, James. I literally had my first bunk that was diagonal from the restrooms, which is crazy.
It's Flushing Meadows.
It's Flushing Meadows. Yeah.
Toilets.
A little bit of a light in there. Yeah.
It's all night long.
Yep.
So bottom line, that's my address. Johnny Walker makes me feel at home. I've got a Korean guy named James in my cell or my cubicle, and life begins at 32 Low on that day, April 19th.
So what did you do? Like, for me, I got a prison job that I worked at the food warehouse, and then I got to work at the Fort Leavenworth golf course. I read a lot, worked out a lot. How did you, your mindset? Because James, you came from a world where you wanted to be James. I'm sure you didn't want to lose James in there. Yeah. How did you work around and stay in that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I'm a people person. I love people. I do. I realized right away, and I had Johnny Walker give me this advice. He said, "Listen, there's a lot of liars in here. There's a lot of folks in here who fabricate professionally." He said, "I want you to lay low. I'm going to introduce you to people who you should know, and I'm not going to introduce you to people you shouldn't know." He said, "So let's just be patient with this." And we started walking the track together, talking as he would point people out across the yard, and he would walk me up to people. He would give me a little background on them before he would introduce me. He would then give them my background, and we began to form a coalition of equally minded guys. And I met on day 1 or 2, 4 or 5 key guys that became my group. And then I realized I may have a role to play in here, helping people. Okay. Because there's a lot of folks who are victims mentally, and they shouldn't be.
Right.
They think they're the victim.
Right. Yeah. They're prisoners of their own mind.
Yeah. Totally. They've created all the walls that they constructed. And so I realized real quick that I can help disassemble some of that stuff, and that I'm verbally pretty good at talking that through. And so I would say within the first 30 days, I began walking different guys on that track, disassembling false beliefs, disassembling things that just aren't true about them or the world. I had one guy tell me, he goes, "You're the first white friend I've ever had." And I said, "Well, I promise you, a lot of good white people. I think you've been judging pretty harshly." This was a Hispanic fellow who was raised in the ghettos, only knew Hispanic guys, maybe a few African American guys, but never had a white friend ever. Didn't trust them. They were part of the problem. And so this guy and I got along great. This guy's name was Apache. Yeah. And we got along great. And as it turned out, he was a leader within his group. Yep. And Apache broke down walls within that group. And one after another, Apache's whole gang ends up, we disassemble a lot of bullshit that was in their head about life, about prison, about life on the outside, and about
Wow.
what life is supposed to be on the outside. So that's
Love
how I
that.
spent my time, man.
Love
I,
that.
I, I did a lot of writing and
Yeah.
reading,
Yeah.
but that was selfish time when it was just me. But I would say the majority of my constructive time was spent with men, um, me helping them, and in return, them helping me.
When you were, were you in during COVID? I guess
Yeah,
towards the back end of it, you were, and that had to be horrific for all kinds of reasons because they could lock you down, so make it
yeah.
easy for them with the new rules that we could. But while that was all happening, James, what were you thinking about? Because everybody gets a little freaked out when it gets close to getting to the door to get out. What did you start thinking about as far as what life was going to be for you on the outside?
Well, I was really fortunate. My mother had done a great job having my family, my children, all 6 children, come visit me every 30 days.
Love that.
My mother came every 30 days. A
That's how you
lot of my
stay plugged
friends,
into the real world that way.
totally. I lived from visit to visit
Absolutely.
and marked my calendar from visit to visit. And it became fundamental to how I did my time. And so I was really plugged in almost from the beginning. I didn't feel like I was in a crack.
Mhm.
I think it's easy to feel like you've slid into a crack when you go into prison because you don't have access to the internet. There's not a
Right.
good way to keep track of your network. If they don't come see you, you don't see
Don't
them.
know what's going on. Right.
Right. And I'm a good writer, so I wrote lots of letters to my friends so they could be updated on what I was up to, and I love telling them fun stories.
Yeah.
I wanted my friends and family to know I was not in danger. There was no safety risk.
Right.
This is actually more of a comedy routine than it is a bad experience, and I wanted them to find joy in my journey so that when I returned, it would be they would want to sit down and hear the stories as opposed to uh, try to investigate if I was still the same guy.
Exactly.
And I think there's a benefit in that. And if anybody's going in, I'm telling you right now, you need to do this. There's a risk that your network, I don't care how well connected you are, there's a risk that your network thinks the prison can change you, which would alter your relationship with them. And that's a risk they face. That's a risk your friend is dealing with. That's a risk your network is facing. Forget your risk for a minute. Put yourself in their shoes. They're worried about their well adjusted friend not being well adjusted anymore.
Exactly.
And so
All right. Good
I
point.
needed to put that to bed by my communication. And so I was constantly communicating and updating. I even had a live blog from week to week that I think mom had 160 people on that email chain. They would get an update every week. And it wasn't a misery index. It
No.
was, oh my God, these stories are amazing. I can't wait to meet so and so. And so I was making these people that were important to me live characters in the blog so that when there were visits, I could
Point him
introduce.
out. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we did. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's how I did my time, Brent. That's how I survived it.
So getting out, talk us through reentry.
Yeah. I got out early. I got out after 14 and a half months, which really a blessing. I did not anticipate this. The COVID-19 hit uh, at the end of the first year I was in there. And
Okay.
of course, we're scared. We're thinking we're all at risk.
Everybody's going to die.
Yeah. And we're thinking the guards are bringing it in because we're somewhat contained
Sure.
from any contamination, except for the guards who are in and out of the public. Uh, So the guards began to isolate from us, and we began to have to stay in our. At the time, it's cubicles, but eventually, the Bureau of Prisons decided to close our camp and transfer us to a medium security facility. So we all get hauled up in the middle of the night shackled at the ankles, shackled at the waist, boarding buses. By the way, if you've never been shackled,
It's
you're
dehumanizing.
walking about an inch and a half at a time. And if you slip up and walk 2 inches, you can fall flat over on your face, knock all your teeth out because your hands are not available to secure your fall. So every step you take better be a shuffle. And you better be very familiar with each step because the shackles guarantee you're not getting a step in. So we're all shackled. We watch older people fall in these shackles and really get bloodied up because there's no way to catch them. There's no way for them to catch themselves. So anyway, it was a nightmare, literally a nightmare journey as they transferred all of us on buses managed by the U.S. Marshals. We moved. That's the most difficult time. Inmate sentence is a transfer. Because the transfer creates conditions that are unbearable. And so we're in an unbearable situation. You're not stopping for the restroom. We're not using the rest areas along the freeway. People are soiling themselves. As we make our way to Fresno, California, to the federal facility called Mendota, which is a medium security facility. Medium is a lockdown for people that are there 15 years or more, and it's usually a more violent criminal. It's usually someone who needs a little more containment. And so they find an empty wing of this medium security facility and lock us campers in a medium security facility. We're all paired up, and then 23 and a half hours a day, we're behind a steel door. This is not like a cell door that shuts because COVID would just work its way right through the cell. So it's a steel door like a vault, where if you're on the back side of this door and you're speaking to me, I got to look it through the little glass to read your lips because I still cannot hear you because it's solid steel. And when they shut those doors, you know you're encased in there. It is a suffocating feeling. Like,
Oh man, that gave you claustrophobia just for you explain
when
that.
they shut those doors, you feel claustrophobic. You feel like, oh man,
Yeah.
when is this COVID going to end?
And how long did you live like that?
3 months
Wow.
in that cell
Wow.
with a guy named Chihuas who speaks as much English as I speak Spanish. So we used hand signals and pictures to communicate inside there. Now, this guy was really respectful. And of course, I'm respectful. And it really worked out great in that close quarters.
Wow.
But we're there 3 months. Our meals are shoved through an envelope slot in the door, and our dirty tray is shoved back through that envelope slot. In 30 minutes, every 24 hours, we get out to shower, which is in a see-through cage. So the guards and everybody can just see you in the shower, see-through cage, or make your phone calls to your family. So you have to choose
Either or.
shower or phone calls. And so you end up doing showers on one day, phone calls on the next, shower and phone call, and you rotate. And by the way, we're cleaning the phones with all these chemicals because of the COVID. You know, we got all these crazy chemicals being moved around, and we're all wearing the mask.
Yeah. And doesn't it give you some kind of unique confidence in yourself that you can just about adapt to anything that way?
Yeah. You can't scare me. There's nothing you could say to scare me. There's nothing you could do actually to scare me. I all sorts of, encounters since being released that I'm not fazed by.
Yeah.
There's really, I mean, what are you going to do? I've been arrested. I've been shackled.
Yeah.
I've been locked up, locked down. I've been in the segregated housing unit. I've been through every hellscape you can create for me, and I'm still okay.
I'm still standing.
Yeah. So yes, you feel, hey, you talk about building someone's confidence. If you get through there and you keep control of your faculties and maybe come out stronger, boy, there's not a lot you can't do.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
In fact, you can do everything.
So let's talk about that. What are you doing now, James?
Well, while I was in, I had spent so many years in financial services. During my indictment, they take your licenses and you end up, you can't even
Got
do
to
what you're
strip you
trained
down to
to.
all the things that you're good at, right?
Yes, they try to remove not just your money and your
Right.
assets and your family. They try to take your ability to make a living away.
Right.
And so I decided I needed to change professions. And I've already logged at this point 45,000 hours. At 10,000 hours, you're an expert. I'm at 45,000 hours in my domain. I'm actually a prolific expert in my domain. And so while inside, I decided to move down through the technology space and develop a scoring algorithm that could score someone financially. So when you sit down with someone financially, you need to do a needs analysis to determine what they need from a financial standpoint. Are they retirement ready? Are they tax efficient? These type of things. Well, I developed 27 questions that I thought should be asked every single time a financial advisor sits down with a client.
Okay.
These 27 questions I felt covered the gamut of what should be discussed to properly diagnose and prescribe what they need. And also understand the client's ideology and the way they think about money, and some of it's wrong, some of it's right, just where are they? So those 27 questions, I developed an algorithm that had weight to each question. And based on how you answer the question, it would drive a score in real time. And so when I got out, I put engineers together. I just called around and found engineers that knew how to program and write code. And I developed a financial score that allows a financial planner to sit with a client, whether you're licensed yesterday afternoon or been licensed 50 years. If you ask these 27 questions, a client will get a financial score. And it assesses retirement readiness, tax efficiency, and overall financial health.
Okay.
And the client loves it. And then AI is now attached to it. And so AI can now make the recommendations. Awesome. So based on that score and those questions, the AI will tell you or the advisor what should be done.
Wow.
And so I developed that software. It's in subscription form. It's being used by financial advisors all across the United States. And so that's it. I did that. I stayed in the space. It's what I know best.
I love that. I love that you got stripped of what you have as these licenses, but you figured out, well, that doesn't take my brain away. I can still provide things that they need in that space. And that's what you did, James.
Yes. And I don't believe I would have even considered this had they not taken away the license, because I wouldn't have had to be creative. I wouldn't have had to think about a different way to approach the expertise that I still possess. And so that's what I'm doing today. Busy meeting with financial advisory companies and financial advisors individually. I've got a team of engineers, AI engineers, and code writers that manage the subscription-based service. And so that's what we're doing.
Are you still doing motivational speaking?
I get asked to do that a lot. And I do it. I get invited to be on great podcasts like this.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it. Yes. So I still do that.
I know that you're good at it, because you have such a great way of presenting how you can feel your story, James, how you tell it, and you can feel it. And it's,
thank you.
I wonder what this question, because I ask this question to everybody that's on the show, is, after everything that you've been through, James, what's your greatest takeaway? I'm really curious what your answer is to that.
What's interesting is I do have a takeaway, and I do get asked this: what's the lesson you learned?
Yeah.
If there is a lesson, what is it?
Yeah.
And it's not about how the government can mess you up. It's not about anything that's been done to me. It's about a lesson I need to learn for me. I literally thought in my mind that I had a reputation, and that I had spent 30 years building it.
So proud of it.
And I was proud of it. And I spent my career managing it. Almost every decision I make was making sure that the reputation was not tarnished damaged. And I think a lot of professionals spend a lot of energy managing their reputation. And what I learned was that it's a fallacy to believe that I have anything to do with my reputation. It wasn't built by me. It was built by outsiders. It was external to me. The reputation was built in spite of me. But what I did build, and I still have control of, and had control of throughout, was my character. It's the way I treat people. It's the choices I make when the shit hits the fan. It's the decisions I get to make in the privacy of my mind between stimulus and response that dictate who I will be. So if you have to choose, this was the lesson. If you have to choose between reputation and character, I would say always choose character, because the reputation was never yours anyway. It can be taken from you in a heartbeat. Mine was taken in an October, fall of 2012. The government decided my reputation was over. And they decided that they would post a press release telling the world shit that was not true. And so I learned in about 30 minutes that my reputation was over. And that and it took me a while to figure out.
What does that mean?
Weeks defending myself, explaining. And then finally I had to settle on the fact that, damn it, I didn't do anything. I'm pulling my shoulders back. I can look any man in the eyes. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I'll answer any question you got. Well, all I got is my character. And I've maintained that throughout. It saved my ass. It allowed my network to stay intact. It allowed all my friends to show up at the end when I was released and say, what are we going to do now?
I love that. And I love you breaking it and forking it into reputation and character, because character that's what it's in your soul. Reputation is something that is exactly.
It's the scaffolding of your life. You can build your life with character. And I can tell you, you have the total control to give that away too. Yeah. I mean, you could screw that up with some bad decisions. And then I don't know
any given situation, it's all about character, how you handle it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow. What a good takeaway. What a great takeaway, James. I love it. I love your story. I love what you're doing now. I love how you got through it. And you just never gave up. And the whole thing, you have little pieces. Talk about mentoring and coaching. There's all kinds of little pieces in here all throughout your story that people can grab from. But you didn't lose yourself through this story. You stayed consistent with who you were. And I think that's one of the biggest things, and the biggest takeaway is something like this happens, very easy to lose yourself in your own nightmare. And then that nightmare is what defines you. And that's not what defines you. What defines you is your character, James, and how you handled your nightmare. You know, everybody has challenges, and how you handle that challenge makes you a winner or a loser in the way that you move forward in life. And I think that's what makes your story inspiring.
Thank you.
Talking about gratitude and things like that, I want to thank Homestead Financial, who lets me use this podcast room with all their fancy cameras and stuff. If anybody's got home mortgage needs, Greg Afdiev is your guy. He knows all that stuff. If you're looking for a book out there, check mine out. I got Nightmare Success that's on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Please leave me a review if you got time on Apple. If you want to know what I'm doing, go to BrentCassidy.com. I spell it wrong. I spell it with a T-Y, not a D-Y. As I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. James Catledge, thank you so much for being a guest today. I think you gave so much for people to hear and listen to.
And learn from. With you, Brent. Really, I'm really impressed with the work you're doing, and I'm a fan of your podcast.
I love that. Love that, James. For all of you, Nightmare Success, in and out.
Great. Thank you.